retirement, savings, financial security. You have questions? Stay tuned. We've got an expert. Today we're talking about one of my favorite topics because it can change the trajectory of someone's life, and that's retirement planning, savings, financial security. AARP is just a strong advocate for making certain that people have a kind of quality of life that they want as they age. So we're so glad you're here, Chris. Thanks for being with us today. We're going to talk about financial security, retirement planning, but first let's talk about you. How'd you get involved with this business?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Well, growing up, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I got into the honors program at Grand Valley State, and my dad was a psychology professor, so I really liked psychology and what made people think, but I knew I didn't want to be a psychology teacher, so I was like, I need to get some type of business degree as well. And my mom, she had a finance MBA, so I coupled psychology and finance together. And I was thinking about getting into financial planning coming out of undergrad, but as part of my finance track, I had a business law class. I just knocked out of the park. I was like, let me try this law stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, so I ended up going to Michigan State for law school. And
Go green.
Go green, go white, exactly, yeah. And so I spent one summer at the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office, like going to court, and like I was on the good guy side, but it wasn't for me. I don't like conflict and arguing. So I knew I wanted to do something where I'm just sitting down with good families, helping them. And so I got into estate planning and financial planning and kind of went on from there.
Interesting. But wow, that's an interesting journey. Yeah. And it also reminds me that we don't always know what we want to be or do when we're in college. So
right.
It's okay to change your mind every now and then, right?
Exactly.
So we're glad you're here. That's the journey that brought you here today.
Yeah.
So as we talk about retirement, what's the first thing that people need to know as they think about retirement planning, retirement savings? What do they need to know?
Yeah. Well, first of all, they need to know that they need to put time into this. Like sometimes I see people spend more time planning their vacation than their retirement. I remember sitting in my conference room as we were planning a family trip to Disney World, and we spent about 4 hours sitting there planning. I'm like, I think some families spend more time on this than they actually like thinking about planning for the rest of their life. But a lot of times it's finding a good partner, and that's where we like to partner with our clients to help them navigate this retirement and legacy process. And we think there's really 5 key areas that families need to focus on. Focus on income planning. So once you move into retirement, you don't have those paychecks coming in, right? And then investing, tax planning, healthcare and long-term care planning, and then legacy planning.
You know, we know a little bit about income, but the tax planning, that's something that you don't hear very much about from any financial planner that I'm aware of, because taxes can impact what you think you're going to receive as you retire. Talk a little bit more about that.
Sure, yeah. I think taxes right now are one of the biggest risks and biggest opportunities, just based on all the current tax law changes that have happened. So if you have a pre-tax 401k or IRA where you've deferred paying taxes, I've sat down with a lot of families where they move into retirement and all of a sudden they're paying the same, if not more, taxes in retirement. Because when you factor in Social Securities and pensions, and then once you're over 72 or 73, you have to start taking out your required minimum distributions, that can add up from a tax perspective. And we know with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that is expiring in 2026, that taxes across the board are going up at least 3 to 5%, depending on where you're at. So we're helping clients right now with what we call IRA exit strategies, of looking at pulling money intelligently from those pre-tax accounts and moving it over into something like a Roth IRA.
And so talk about a Roth IRA. What does that do for you?
Sure. So the nice thing about a Roth IRA, and that's not the only IRA exit strategy, it's probably the most common, where you take pre-tax dollars, you pay the tax, and now it moves into a tax-free account where now all this money can grow tax-free.
So you take the pre-tax dollars and you pay the taxes when you take it out of the accounts.
Yes.
And then you move it over into a Roth so that it can continue to, and you don't have to continue to earn money, but you don't have to pay any taxes on that because you paid the taxes.
Yeah.
Do you have to pay taxes on the interest in the Roth?
No. So any of the growth is completely tax-free. And then when you leave it to maybe kids or beneficiaries, they inherit it tax-free. So you're moving stuff from an always taxed account. Anything inside of that pre-tax IRA, it's almost always going to be taxed. Well, let's pay the tax now while taxes are lower and move it over into an account that's never going to be taxed again.
Does that influence what type of income bracket you're in? So if you're in a higher income bracket and you take that money out, that's going to increase the amount of taxes you have to pay now.
Right, yeah. So if you do pay the tax now, that is going to be additional income. And so that's where we're sitting down with clients, and this is where we blend the legal, the financial, and tax planning all together, where we're sitting down with clients looking at their tax returns, figuring out how much space there is to look at an IRA exit strategy of maybe a Roth conversion. Maybe there's $40,000 that we could take out of the IRA, pay the tax now, put it over into Roth, that won't bump us up into a next higher tax bracket.
Well, something else as you're planning this that people don't often think about, that we hear all the time, and that's long-term health care. Planning for your health care, your own health, the health of a loved one. What can people do to make certain they have the kind of money they need to take care of a loved one or to take care of themselves?
Right, yeah, so a lot of it's just understanding what we call the elder care journey. And as a certified elder law attorney, we've been helping families kind of navigate this process of, okay, if we need home care, what's that going to look like? Assisted living, what's that going to look like? Nursing home, what's that going to look like? And how much is it going to cost? Like these days, a nursing home runs $10,000 to $15,000 a month. And so the question is, how do we go about paying for that? And so that's where there's really 6 ways to pay for long-term care at the end of the day. We can private pay, so just spend down our money, spend down the IRA, or our spouse spends down their money. Second, we can have the kids pay. A lot of times they don't pay. Yeah, a lot of times they don't pay financially, but they pay in terms of their time, where they're taking time out of their day to visit the elder law attorney, or putting their life on hold to become a full-time caregiver. Third, we have long-term care insurance, and there's some different strategies there. Fourth, we have Medicare, but Medicare doesn't really pay for long-term care. It only pays for short-term rehab. And then fifth, we have the veterans benefit, which could bring in extra $1,000 to $2,000 a month to help pay for long-term care. And then the sixth way is Medicaid, which will pay for that final step of needing nursing home care.
So there's a lot for people to consider, and it can sound overwhelming, but like you said, you need to sit down and plan, and that's the operative word. You need to have a plan, or people need to have a plan. You talked about a Roth and how you can move the taxes. Talk about a Roth versus a estate or a trust. What's the difference between the two? Who needs a trust? Who doesn't need a trust? And
Sure. Yeah. So a Roth IRA and traditional IRA, those are investment accounts. And really, when we're talking about estate planning and wills and trusts, it's all about estate administration. How do we take those IRAs, those Roths? What happens if we pass away? How does that transfer to the next generation? And really, the question of will versus trust, which makes the most sense? Should I have a last will and testament, or should I have a trust, or should I have both? It really depends on what you're trying to accomplish and what your goals are. And so when we're talking about that, understanding estate administration, how do assets transfer out of your name upon passing, is really important. And there's only 4 ways assets can transfer. One would be through joint ownership. So if you're joint with a spouse on a checking account, you pass, it goes to the spouse. Second would be beneficiary designations. So do you have a beneficiary on that Roth IRA or that traditional IRA? Third would be through a trust, and there's different types of trust depending on what your goals are. But if an asset doesn't pass through joint ownership, beneficiary designation, trust, then it ends up going into probate, and that's what we all want to avoid. Now, the one thing I didn't mention is a will. A will does not transfer assets. All a will does is gives instructions to the probate court on how to administer your estate. So if you're asking the question of will versus trust, understand a will is your ticket to probate court.
okay, and a will can be challenged. Can a trust be challenged?
Yeah, so both a will and a trust could be challenged, but the nice thing about a trust is you can build in language, so if someone challenges it and loses, they get knocked out of the trust.
And so people need to plan which one, or should they just automatically go to establishing a trust? Or is there a minimum dollar amount or minimum assets that you need in order to establish a trust?
Sure, yeah. So I wouldn't say that there's a minimum of assets, but you do have to have some assets, like a house. Even if you have a house, then you might be considering a trust-based estate plan. But when I talk about kind of estate planning, everyone over the age of 18 should have some type of plan, because once you turn 18, legally you're an adult. And so for a lot of our clients who have adult age children, we're doing not necessarily a trust, but we're doing a financial power of attorney and a medical power of attorney. We call those
huge.
Yeah, we call those disability documents. Anyone over the age of 18 should have those in place. But then as you have children, or maybe you have a house, then we'll start thinking about the trust as a way to transfer those assets.
Let's park there just for a hot minute. So someone who has a child who's just turned over 18 in college or whatever, they don't have the authority to determine what happens to that now adult?
Yeah, and that's mind-blowing for a lot of people.
It's mind-blowing for me.
Yeah, once you turn 18...
Excuse me, I gotta go call my child.
Yeah, once you turn 18, legally you're an adult. And we've had situations. I had a colleague of mine, his daughter was away at school. She ended up getting a car accident and injured, and because she didn't have the disability documents, like the HIP authorization, the release of medical information, he was unable to get any information. The doctors weren't allowed to share any information because of the privacy rules. So once you turn 18, legally you're an adult. Now, none of my, I'm not talking with a lot of 18-year-olds who are coming in
right.
trying to find me, but a lot of times we're working with our clients and we're saying, hey, your son or daughter just turned 18. You need to get these disability documents in place, the financial power of attorney and the medical power of attorney.
And so the parent should tell the child, they has to come with the child, or does the child go in and find you? How does that happen? They come in together?
Yeah, so typically what we're doing is most of our clients are near or around retirement age. But one of the things that we educate our clients on, because we're big on education, is that, hey, once your kids turn 18, like legally they're adults. And so a lot of times the kids don't really care, but it's like, hey, daughter or son, like come in, talk to Chris.
Come together,
Yeah.
so they both need to come in
Yeah.
at the same time. At what age should people start planning this? You said the earlier the better, but isn't the cost also drastically less if they start planning earlier?
Yeah, we see what we call like a life cycle of estate planning where, yeah, once you turn 18, you need what we call the disability documents, the financial, the medical power of attorney. And then maybe you have a child. Well, now you need to think about guardianship. God forbid you pass, who's going to take care of that minor child? Then as you get older and you get near retirement age, you start accumulating more and more wealth. And now we need to start thinking about trusts and avoiding probate. And then we see, oh, our kids married that person, and I don't want the money to go to the in-law. I want it to go down to the grandkids. We call the in-laws the outlaws. We always keep them out. And then also we might look at a trust as a way to protect against long-term care costs as well, where we can put together asset protection trusts, where once we've made it 5 years before we need a nursing home, everything inside of that trust is protected from that nursing home or Medicaid spend down. But to get to your question, yeah, the earlier we start thinking about these things, the more options we're going to have on the table, and typically less cost.
And if nothing else, we've all seen so many people who had to sell their home or get rid of all their assets in order to go into the nursing home and get some support, financial support. So having that money 5 years prior to that incident happening, hopefully it never will, protects the assets.
Right, yeah. So as certified law attorneys, we can put together asset protection trusts that are different than your basic revocable trust. Think of this as like a piggy bank. We can move assets. We can move the home into the piggy bank. We can move investments into the piggy bank. And then once we've made it 5 years, 100% of what we put in that trust is protected from that nursing home or Medicaid spend down, because Medicaid's that governmental program that can pay for the nursing home care. But a married couple at most can have $120,000. A single individual can only have $2,000, and then Medicaid looks back 5 years. So by us setting up the trust, moving the assets in the trust, making it that 5 years, now we can have Medicaid pay that cost of care. We have a pot of resources to improve our quality of life. And if we're married, we can say if one spouse needs nursing home care, the healthy spouse isn't completely impoverished having to pay for it.
And that's so important. I just hope that people are inspired, encouraged, or motivated to do something about their long-term care, because we all think we're going to be healthy for the rest of our lives, but we, as Rosalind Carter would say, there aren't going to be a caregiver, you're going to need a caregiver at some point in your life. So either way, you need to have a plan. What would you advise people to do when they get ready to start retirement savings? What's the first thing that they should do? Should they contact a financial planner? Should they start putting money away? Should they get the documents? Like I'm thinking right now, I'm going to go call my grandson, and but what should they do? What's the first step they should take?
Yeah, well, the first step I think is work with a professional, or at least get some counsel from someone who's gone through this. Because understand that you only really retire once, hopefully, right? Or you only pass away once. Like as a certified financial planner and LO attorney, I'm doing this every day with clients. Like I've seen so many different things. And so if you're just starting out, one of the biggest things is think about where you're saving money. Are you saving in a pre-tax 401k that when you retire is going to be taxed, maybe at a higher rate? Or are you saving in a post-tax account, maybe a Roth IRA or Roth 401k that grows tax-free? So be intelligent about where you're saving your money. Talk to a professional, because too often I've sat down with people who are at retirement age. They saved all their money in these pre-tax accounts, and now they're looking around and saying, I'm paying more tax now than I was while I was working.
Right, and the market is so volatile right now. So how do you protect yourself to make certain that your money is in somewhere where it's protected? You're not going to lose more money than you put in.
Right. Yeah, and that's where, like over the last couple of years, we've seen some 401ks get turned into 201ks because of the market volatility. And understand that the way that we invest when we're 30 is different than the way we should be investing if we're 60 or 70. And we kind of have a rule of thumb. We call it the rule of 100, where we take your age, so let's say 70, subtract that from 100, and so that leaves you 30. So maybe 30% of your investment should be aggressive in equities. The remaining 70% should be more conservative, because as you move into retirement, you're going to have to start drawing on these assets. And we don't want the market going up and down, because if you're pulling from an asset that's dropping, it doesn't have time to rebuild like it did when you were 30.
Wow, I just need to pause for a moment. That's some good stuff. Right? All right, let's talk. I want to back up for just a moment and talk about power of attorney, medical power of attorney as well. That's something that not just financial, but medical power of attorney. Something people don't often plan for. Talk a little bit about the importance of having a medical power of attorney.
Yeah, so the medical power of attorney appoints someone to make medical decisions for you.
It doesn't have to be a family member.
It doesn't have to be a family member. It can be anyone. Sometimes people prefer a family member because they don't want, they're going to pull the plug on me. Right. So the two key disability documents is that financial power of attorney and that medical power of attorney. And that medical power of attorney, like I said, appoints someone to make medical decisions, including your decisions with regards to life support, because that is one of the most important decisions. And you might have heard of this woman. Her name was Terry Schiavo. And she didn't have these documents in place, and she ended up being in a vegetative state, and her husband wanted to remove her from life support, her family wanted her to remain in life support. It became a big court battle that lasted over 8 years, made it all the way up to the Supreme Court. All of that could have been avoided had Terry Schiavo had that medical power of attorney in place. And there's two key takeaways from that case. First of all, Terry Schiavo was young. She was in her mid-20s when she became incapacitated and passed away in her mid-30s. So anyone over the age of 18 should have these disability documents, the financial and medical power of attorney. And then the second key takeaway was Terry Schiavo was married. A lot of people assume that, hey, just because I'm married, I can automatically make these decisions for your spouse, and that's just not the case.
Oh, we need to all be mindful of that, because we don't often think about, just walk outside and someone could get hit by a car or a bus, and all of a sudden you don't have someone making decisions about, or you don't even know yourself. You haven't talked to anyone about what you want to have happen, whether you want to be on life support or not be on life support, and who makes those decisions. A lot of people who are probably listening to this program are thinking, I don't have enough money to have a will, or I don't have enough money to have a trust. What would you say to them?
Yeah. Well, what I would say to them is that understand that you need to create your rule book. Even if you're just handwriting things or telling your family, there has to be some type of plan. And understand that if you don't create your own rule book, then you're going to rely on the government's rule book. And things are going to end up in probate court, and it's going to be messy. I remember growing up, I was about 12. And my uncle, he didn't have a lot. He worked for Ford. He was on the line. He hurt his back. He got addicted to painkillers, actually, and ended up overdosing and passing away. And he had 3 children. He didn't have a lot. All he had was his disability money coming in. And the only thing he had was a life insurance policy for $10,000. And he had a will that said everything should go to his 3 sons equally. Unfortunately, the life insurance policy named the youngest son as the beneficiary. And so the will didn't control the life insurance. The $10,000 went to the youngest son. The 2 other brothers said, hey, that money was supposed to be split between the 3 of us. Now, 30 years later, they still don't talk about that. And that's just over a $10,000 life insurance policy. So it's important that when we're talking about estate planning, it's not just about assets, it's about legacy. And what is he remembered for now is basically splitting the family up.
Yeah, that's really sad. I'm sorry to hear that they had to go through that as well. And you said over $10,000. So when we talk about cost, it's not just cost, it's value.
Exactly.
And it's the benefit of having that kind of information and making it easier for the folks who you're leaving behind who know how to deal with all of that. So what other advice would you give us? What have we not talked about that you'd like to share with this audience?
Yeah, well, I think the big thing is just to have a plan in place, make sure that we've covered, especially as you're talking about retirement and legacy planning, those 5 key areas. What is your plan for income? Okay, are you going to rely on Social Security, pensions? How are we going to draw down the assets? Having that investment plan, making sure that the way that we invest when we're 60 is maybe different than the way that we're 20. Really look at taxes, because I think taxes, like I said, are one of the biggest risks and biggest opportunities right now, really because of 2 big tax law changes that we've had.
You said in 2026, correct?
Yeah. So the first one is the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that runs from 2018 and it runs out in 2026. And basically across the board, what's going to happen is in 2026, your taxes are going to go up at least 3 to 5%. Okay. Now, we're also $32 trillion in debt, so taxes could go up much higher. And so if you have pre-tax 401k money or IRA money, we should have some type of IRA exit strategy, pulling money from those accounts. And
when you say your taxes are going to go up, you mean your taxes on your savings will go up?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So your taxes on pulling money out of those IRAs,
will go up.
the tax on your Social Security is going up, the tax on your pension is going up 3 to 5% across the board. Yeah. And then the other big tax law change we had is the Secure Act that passed in 2019. And that pushed back the age where you have to pull money from those IRAs and 401ks back from 70 and a half to 72. But the real reason they passed that Secure Act is that at the time, the government was $22 trillion in debt, and there was $26 trillion sitting in those pre-tax accounts. So they wanted to come after your IRAs and 401ks, but they knew they couldn't come after yours. But what they did is that when you leave it to the next generation, when you leave those pre-tax accounts to the kids, instead of them stretching the taxes over their lifetime, now they have to pay all the taxes within 10 years. So what the government wants you to do is pass away, leave that money to the kids. They're just happy to get anything, but then now they're going to come after the kids
and get the taxes.
Yeah.
And the way to protect that is to get that money out and put it into something like an estate or
right.
Roth or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Develop that IRA exit strategy of pulling money from that pre-tax account, paying the tax, and investing it somewhere else. Maybe it's a Roth. Maybe it's just a post-tax investment account. Yep.
That's excellent advice. And so people, number one, if you don't take anything else away from this, take away plan. Talk to somebody because it's your life savings. And I love the story that you shared. Thank you for sharing that story about the $10,000 and three brothers who don't even talk with each other now. So it doesn't matter whether it's 10,000 or whether it's 10 million. You need a plan.
Right.
What should people know as they begin their retirement planning?
Well, I think there's 3 key things or threats that people need to take into account when they're planning for retirement. And the first threat that we have to watch out for is market volatility. We don't want someone's 401k to become a 201k right as we're going into retirement because we're going to have to draw on those assets. And the second key is to understand tax planning. I think taxes right now are one of the biggest risks and biggest opportunities based on our current tax laws. And then the third key is planning for long-term care. Planning for the devastating cost of long-term care and nursing home costs, which could run $10,000 to $15,000 a month.
Wow, market volatility, long-term care, and tax risk, those are huge.
Right.
And a person can't do that on their own. They need to really find a professional to help walk them through that, correct?
Correct.
And some of the benefits of having a plan for long-term care means that you don't have to figure out how to put someone loved one in a nursing home or do something different. So talk a little bit more about that. We hear that frequently about the expense associated with long-term care.
Right. So as a certified elder law attorney, I see people take what we call the elder care journey of needing home care, then maybe assisted living, and maybe needing nursing home care. And so as an elder law attorney, we help families navigate that to make sure, A, the person gets the best care possible, and then B, to make sure that maybe the surviving or the healthy spouse isn't completely impoverished having to pay for that.
That's really important. We hear that frequently. And then the taxes, I don't hear that very often. You know, the taxes can have a tremendous impact on what you think your nest egg is versus what the actual net income is.
Right, exactly. So if you have pre-tax accounts like 401ks, IRAs, understand those are always going to be taxed. And with the current tax changes, we know that taxes are going up in the future. Plus, we're $32 trillion in debt as a country, so a lot of people think taxes might have to go up a lot more. And if taxes go up, the value of those accounts go down.
Ouch. The key word here is to plan. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.